So we are here for our coffee chat. I'm looking a bit windblown today, Brice. It's hideous here. And I'm going to read it off my phone because it's something I posted on Instagram. To start us off today for our coffee chat, we're going to be talking about your mind is like a garden and your words are like seeds. Watch what you plant. Now, the reason we're going to start off with this, and we've got loads of bits that we want to bring into this, is that we've talked about this so much, haven't we, Brice, about how everything, we are just energy. We are fractals of the greater, as above, so below. And every single interaction, every thought we have, everything we speak, everything we write down is basically bringing that into our existence. And how, if we want to change this global situation that's going on at the moment and we're all being affected by, we have to start with ourselves.
Absolutely. And I want to say before we get started, I love your windblown hair. I think it's very sassy. So
Oh,
it's very sexy. So
oh, thank you. Thank you.
People pay a lot of money to have professional hairdressers make their hair look windblown. So.
It's so funny. It is so funny. I always do look, as my mum says, like I've been dragged by through a bush backwards. And then I frantically, when Brice and I get on, quickly I brush the hair. But oh, what tangled webs we weave when first we practice to deceive. And life is a web. Everything is connected to everything else, as we know, on a conscious level and on a cause and effect level, on a karmic level. And we've been having some really interesting discussions this week, because one of the things that you and I are both really passionate about is connecting the dots, the dot to connector, as David Icke would say, because we need to be able to do this, don't we?
Well, that's critical thinking skills. And that's what research really is. I mean, people ask me all the time about, well, how are you researching? We've been trained to memorize and regurgitate, but research is actually looking at so many different perspectives over the topic you're looking at, and then connecting the dots from what you theorize to be the truth by the patterns that you see formed in all different perspectives. And so, I think critical thinking skills is something that, I know Kelly's coming on your channel through this soon. This is a big thing with cults as well. Cult behavior is diminishing, getting rid of the critical thinking skills. So what is critical thinking? It's seeing the patterns. It's looking at things, objectively looking at things, looking at the solution through organization of criticizing your own perception in order to find a better theory, if that makes sense. And so, a lot of times in our society, we have been now trained to not be critical thinkers. And with the Zappardy, doodah day thing, we were criticized because we actually used our critical thinking skills to say, hey, not for me. But for other, so we're being indoctrinated to rely on somebody else to tell us what the truth is versus seeing the truth for ourselves. And I love that quote. I will tell you guys something that I have done recently. I've gotten back into journaling a lot, which is something I've done on and off my whole life, and something that's heavily in our shadow work challenge. And so what I've done, there's a line in the Newsies musical, and I've memorized the whole script from the breakdown I did, where they say, where a prayer becomes a vow. And that hit me so hard, when a prayer becomes a vow, which is something spoken about the Emerald Tablets too. So even when you pray, everything you think is coming out as a vow, as something you are vowing to the universe. And so in my journaling, what I've been really focused on writing about is things that I maybe am concerned about but want to shift and change. And so it's almost like I'm writing a letter to God or my higher self and saying, this is what I want to happen. This is where I want this to go. And ever since I started doing that, things have been like a domino effect, changing for the better, because I'm planting the seeds, and I'm actually putting this onto paper. Now, this starts with thoughts, but taking that thought, organizing it on the paper, and intentionally putting down what I want, what I need to happen, has shifted everything.
I'm so with you on that. And I've seen this time and time again. And as we say a lot, folks, anyone that's watching this, that none of this stuff is new. None of this is brain science, if you know what I mean. It's not the simple things in life are the real game changers, but what you've actually got to do is stop talking about it and start practicing it and doing it consistently. So if I put an example, like if you want to attract some more abundance into your life. You're never going to attract abundance, whether it's health abundance, financial abundance, abundance of love, whatever that might look for you. You can't do that from a negative point of view. So just like Brice is always telling us, and I 100% agree with, that the dark can't create, it can only mimic, and you cannot create from a feeling of lack. So if you're putting out there that you're begrudging other people, say financial abundance or friendship or joy or health, whatever it might be, you cannot get there from that place. You have to just bring yourself into a place of vibration of what do I want, and really clearly asking for it. And if you're looking for someone else's demise as part of that, you've got an energy mismatch. We have to,
and that demise is going to boomerang back to you. Right?
It really will. And, you know, we learn this the hard way, folks, because if there's something, I love the way Bruce Lipton says it, Brice, that, you know, if you want to know where your subconscious beliefs are at conflict with your desires of what you want to manifest into your life, just look at your life now, because that is a living example of where your beliefs are in conflict with what you're looking to manifest. And it's not looking at it from a critical poor me face, it's a look at it, oh, how funny, this is hysterical, I've obviously got a subconscious belief here that I haven't addressed yet. So I would say, you know, a really easy example for anyone watching to take into account is, if you want to attract more financial abundance into your life, you cannot do that by attacking people that are attracting financial abundance into their life. It doesn't work like that, because you're putting an energy block in there for yourself.
Right. And that's in everything in life, is every reaction you have to something is a reflection of your own inner world.
Yeah.
And so if you are the type of person that gets upset when somebody else is doing well, then that speaks more about the condition of your heart. You know, as they say in the South, well, Lord, you just have a hateful heart, don't you? You know, like that's just, it's more about your feelings of yourself, because everything is a mirror. When you feel like you're genuinely excited about somebody's success, whether that's financially, whatever, a love relationship, a pregnancy announcement, you know, there's so many women out there that struggle with fertility, and they hear their friend gets pregnant, you know, can get stuck in that mind screw up of like, oh, why not me, instead of actually feeling genuinely happy for their friend, you know, then it puts you in a vibrationally different place. And I think this also comes down to, you know, that the biggest struggle I feel like for human beings is finding their own sense of self. And this is a big concept in a lot of the Eastern teachings, where we rely, and you see it with children, like little children, when they mirror you, right? So like a little toddler, even babies, like I know with my nieces and nephew, like when they're little, you make faces at them and they start to make faces, like they're learning from you. But at that age, it's normal to mirror, right? Like as toddlers, they mirror. That's normal because they're learning how to be in the world. But by the time you're an adult, you should not have to do that. You should already have a place to settle into within yourself. And so when people project negativity onto other people because of their successes, for me, not only does it say that you have a hateful heart, but it also shows me that you don't have a sense of self. Because in order to have a sense of self, even if that's something may not be going great for you at the moment, if you have a sense of self, you can still feel happy for when somebody else is successful, because it doesn't affect your sense of self, right? It doesn't offend you. It's like when people are, you know, that's like I say, like, I'm sorry my survival offends you. Like if you are offended by the way somebody else is surviving in the world, then that's a you problem. That's not a them problem. That's a you problem. If you're offended because somebody has a great relationship that you don't have, that's a you problem. That's not a them problem.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I can see how easy it is. The first thing I would say is, if you're noticing this in yourself, don't beat yourself up about it. Just notice it and say, okay, thanks. That's really good information that I can do something with. Because I think all forms of of media, all forms of you know, getting information across. So, like, we've spoken loads of times, Brice, about where is that balance, and it's a very fine line and different for everyone at different times. Where's the fine line between educating yourself, doing your own research, and living your life? Because there is a stage where you can be paralyzed by information, and because you're taking in so much information from outside of yourself that you stop having the time or the space or the energy to listen at what's coming within yourself. And that's why all of these teachings have a period of integration. And that's why, you know, the back to the good old, you know, joke, you can't get slim by watching someone else going to the gym. I mean, in some respects you can, because they've proven that if you really visualize things, but let's get real about it, is this balance between, we're not meant to be in the same gear the whole time. That's why we have different seasons, and you have seasons to take in and absorb information, and then you have time when you need to integrate and stop taking on any more, and then decide which of that information or new skills or tools or that you want to integrate into your being before you move on to the next step. This ebb and flow of life is very important.
Absolutely. And that goes, but when you understand your own ebb and flow, then other people's ebb and flow is not going to bother you. And that's you know, that's again that coming down to that, and that is true. If you, we all do it. Like, there's, for all of us, that's the complexity of being a human, right? That's the humaning aspect of it. We all have moments where we've experienced jealousy or envy or hatred towards another person when that person really hasn't done anything to us. It's us. That is so if you're seeing that, it's, as Ram Dass says, oh, interesting. Okay, interesting. I feel jealous because my friend got a great job. Why does that trigger me? I should be happy for her. Interesting. Let me investigate that, because this is about me. It's not about her. Why am I being triggered? Why am I being triggered by somebody else's success? So that's when, and so that's their ebb and flow of life. It's the same, you know, they say it in the Bible, the band, the Birds, from a few decades back, a time to be born, a time to die, a time to sow, a time to reap. Like, there's times for everything. And you know, that's the thing about life, is it's not just one like straight line of success. We all go through valleys and peaks, valleys and mountains, valleys and mountains. And there's just as much to be learned from the valleys as there is from the mountains. Actually, you probably learn more in the valleys than you do when you're on the mountain peak. And so, yeah, I like that you said, don't be ashamed if you've ever done that. Just go, oh, okay, now I can course correct, because now I see where the problem is. So now I can course correct, and I can start planting seeds to better my life, you know?
Completely. And you know, then it's such a good reminder when we feel things like that about, okay, where am I not prioritizing areas of my life that, you know, where has that prioritization gone off kilt? And the other thing that I think links into this quite as a lot as well is, obviously you, Jamie, and I did looking at the 4 agreements and the 5th agreement by Don Miguel Ruiz. And we love that. And one of the things is about not taking things personally, because if you're going to be built up and fluffed up, your feathers plumped up by someone praising you and telling you how wonderful you are, then equally you're going to be equally affected by the criticism. But equally, if you're the person that's giving out criticism a lot, that equally says a lot about where your heart's at, as you said, because happy people don't criticize other people.
No.
They accept that that's the stage of life they're going through, and they don't embed it. They don't take it on energetically. They don't need to. You can have empathy for what someone else and understanding for where someone else is at without having to embody that yourself and take it on. So I think that's really important when each of us, every single one of us, when we're looking at how we react to certain situations, take the intel and the Chifa community. You know, if you're getting triggered by someone, well, first of all, I would be saying, why do I care about this? Am I watching it for entertainment purposes only? Which is absolutely fine. If you are, we all need that. But, you know, you don't take criticism of people that you don't trust. You know, if you are going to take criticism to heart from people whose opinion you don't respect anyway, then you really have lost that sense of self.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's so true. Like before even starting a YouTube channel, I never really commented on YouTube videos at all. Certainly never left negative comments on a stranger's YouTube video. If I didn't like the video, I would just turn it off. So it does really show more. But for the people that are constantly on our comment section leaving supportive comments, that shows a lot about them. They
Absolutely.
don't have to leave, and the fact that they want to show support, and we appreciate that so much because that shows on the opposite scale, it shows you how loving their heart is, that they would constantly be leaving really supportive comments,
And they're
and
that open to giving, that
yes,
they're going to receive 10 times back. And that is true, because they are actually doing what you were doing in your journal, and they're putting into practice what they'd like to receive more of in their life.
absolutely. And there is something too, when you sent me this topic this morning, Catherine, before we even filmed, I was thinking too about like the valleys, the low points in our life. And we have to be real. And of course, like we've all had pity parties. Like when something bad happens, when you go through a breakup or you lose your job, or, of course you need to take a moment to kind of cry in the corner, like get to shed that energy, but don't hang out there for too long. And it's so interesting. Everybody knows I'm a huge Marnie Alton fan. And on her she says beautiful things in her classes, and on her platform she has Q&As. And there was one day I was cleaning, and I really respect her knowledge too of the body, because when she explains things, she does a really good job combining the biology and the spirituality. And so I was like, oh, I'll watch this Q&A while I'm cleaning. And it started off just being about anatomy questions. And then somebody asked her, this was at the beginning of 2023, somebody asked her, Marnie, what was your New Year's resolution? And she sat for a moment, and she said this in classes before, and I love it. It's a quote. She said, my New Year's resolution was, I didn't come this far to only come this far. And she went deeper into kind of paraphrasing what had happened to her, because what had happened to her kind of is what happens to a lot of us with the lockdown. She had lost her studio. She could have very easily gone into like, woe is me. She created an online platform, which has done even better because now she has people from all over the world that she can work with, including me. And she said, 2022, I really did a lot of cocooning in 2022. I really stayed at home a lot and just kind of needed to like lick my wounds a little bit. But then I realized coming on 2023 that I didn't come this far to only come this far. And it's almost like that, so if you don't stay in that place of self-pity, if you go, okay, plot twist, universe, like something's happened that's out of my control, I need to now change my way of thinking so I can ride this wave with this change. I mean, how genius. She's doing even better now because she decided to shift with the times. And I just thought that was so beautiful, because I mean, how many times have people we know and ourselves gotten stuck in a pity party, and then we get in this rut because we're stuck
Oh,
in that
it's
pity
so
party?
easy.
It's so,
It's
because
so
something
easy.
of left field.
And it stops you moving forward in any aspects of your life. And going back to that we're all fractals, and things that we're experiencing on a personal level is very much a reflection of what's happening globally. And we have all woken up to a lot of stuff about what has been happening sort of in areas that we're not necessarily daily involved in. A lot of the people we're talking about, so I just need to, Indy, stop scratching. She's scratching really loudly on the sofa. But we're getting so sort of tied up again about talking about all these heinous crimes that have been going on with people that we've never met. They might be our so-called leaders, etc. But they're not really our leaders, because how much do they really impact our daily lives? And I think it's a very fine line again, isn't it, between finding out what's going on and using that information to perhaps whether we like to say wake other people up, or sort of get people to look at life through a different perspective. But equally, if you get too far into enjoying the downfall of others, I don't think that's a healthy place to be at all. We talked a lot about how much do we want to talk about what we don't want to happen, and I do genuinely believe there has to be a place for that. But then how quickly do we shift into creating and talking about what we do want to happen?
Yeah, and that's where my journal came in, because it was like, this is the issue. I give myself a couple of lines to talk about the issue, and then this is what I want to happen. This is where I want to course correct. This is where I want to change the trajectory. And yeah, and you're right. That's the thing too. And I keep thinking about, like, there's so many people in this community who, it breaks my heart because it's like they're paused their lives. It's like they're not going to live their life until the RV happens or until this happens. And we can't control that. Like, we don't know when that date is coming, if it's coming at all. So my question to you is, what do you need to do to be happy now? Because that's the true definition of peace, is being, the definition of, or the opposite of war isn't peace. The opposite of war is construction. So peace should be, you should be able to have peace within yourself in all situations of life. That's the practice of the Eastern philosophy. So start to change your mind and be like, what today can I do to change the vibratory reaction that I'm having to my life right now? If I sit on YouTube and I watch video after video after video about all these high crimes and these people that I don't even know, and that's, I've been asking people a lot of that too on my channel. Like when they say, oh, so-and-so's this, or so, how do you know? Because someone told you on YouTube. We don't know these things. Now I can say that Mr. Gates probably is not a great guy because I've seen evidence, but I don't know but that's, I don't know if this person's been, how much are you trying to distract yourself with the intel that's negative and low vibrational, that it's actually putting you in a low vibrational space that you cannot even create a new life for yourself, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting when we look at, I mean, when I'm talking about this, I'm not saying I don't do these things, but every time we label something or someone about good or bad, it's like, well, what, if you want to be a villain, then he's doing a really, really good job about how some geek can actually be, have so much influence. And what I keep asking myself is why do so many people, when you look at the numbers about the masses, the main people, the everyday people amongst us, why do any of us even consider consenting to this lunacy? And at some stage, every single one of us, this would never have got this far if virtually every single one of us hadn't complied to things that we shouldn't have complied to, because it wasn't just quite important enough for us in our life. And this is the reality, is we wouldn't be triggering us in this way if there weren't areas of their lives where we didn't perhaps stand up for something that we really believed in, or perhaps where we let it go, or we let our standards drop, etc. And again, it's quite hard, I find, Brice, to put it across. It's not about us putting ourselves unreasonable expectations, expecting to be perfect. But equally, if we're going to have naughty days when we snack on food that we consciously know is really bad for us, and that's okay, and be grateful that at least we've got access to food to snack on, then if we're then judging others really harshly, really deep down, all we're doing is holding that guilt for ourselves and always feeling that we're never good enough.
Yeah, it's so funny while you're just saying that. I had an awesome subscriber whom I love commented few days ago about DeSantis, about him being switched out. And I asked, like, well, how do you know that? How do you know? And I explained that I actually know Governor I say Mr. DeSantis because he was one of my high school. I know him. He was one of my high school teachers. And I said in the comment, what I see of him as the governor of Florida is the exact same person I saw, just a little older than I saw when I was in high school. I see no indication of him being a different person. And so, yes, when we start to buy into these narratives about other people so harshly, what is it about us that's actually pointing back to? What is it in us that needs to be healed? And why can't somebody just be a good guy? Right? Why does there have to be a story behind that? That's really saying more about people holding on to that information as truth than the ones spilling the information that we don't even know if it's true or not, right? There's no evidence, there's no proof. So I agree with that. Yeah. And of course, like with like Mr. Gates, of course, like we should be mad about what he's done. But in the same token, like where have we done nasty things to our own self? Where have we? And that's what I keep saying. Like I know Catherine, you, me, and Shanti and Mornay, like nothing is going to change until we change. Like that's the whole point. It's about us changing inside. You are the white hats. Like I don't know how many times I have to say that. Like that's the biggest plot twist and the biggest power move of this whole situation we're living through is that you are actually the savior. It's not Mr. T, it's not the Kennedys, it's not DeSantis, it's you. It's each and every single one of us changing the inside of us. So it's like our friend Shanti says, once we raise our vibration up, the low vibrational stuff, it can't even exist with us anymore. But if we keep hanging down here, getting pissed off because somebody's taken a job, or pissed off because of this, or pissed off because of that, and we're projecting that hate out, then we're never going to raise that vibration to change the collective whole.
And it starts with every single action we take. So it's that time where this is where all of these things are so linked. So if you care about what other people think of you, which most people do, I think you've got to be a very evolved person, very spiritually evolved, to not care what people think of you. I care still what people think of me. Now, there's some people I genuinely do not care what they think of me at all, because if I haven't got any respect for them, their opinion of me cannot hurt me in any shape or form. But there's other people that I do care what they think of me still. So when I'm saying this, I'm nowhere near saying I've got to that evolved state, because I haven't. But if we generally got to the stage where we didn't care what people thought of us, and we were confident enough in our sense of right and wrong and how we were going to conduct ourselves on a daily basis, then virtually every single one of these atrocities would have been stopped before it ever got to the state that our planet is now. So let me give you some examples of that. It's like every person who's been ridiculed for standing up against childhood, or these that they're doing. Like, when you're so strong in your belief, and by being strong in your belief does not mean you need to be able to have an argument to argue it out with a scientist. If you're knowing that this is wrong is so strong, that is absolutely good enough. You don't need to go into any further. You don't need to give some peer-reviewed studies that we all know are corrupt anyway. But every single person, every single one of us will be able to look at areas of our lives where we didn't stand up. So a good example for me that I get criticized a lot for is when I see horse riders. There's loads of people that have got horses here. And when I see people riding with whips and spurs and awful bits and awful tight nose bands and things like that on their horses, I will often, even if I don't know the person, say, did you know that that restricts their breathing? Like when I see dogs pulling on a lead all the time and not on a harness. Now, if you're training a dog, it might need to be on a slip lead. There's always exceptions. But every single thing that we don't stand up, where we know something is causing damage to another being in any way, then if all of us stood up at the start, they'd never get to the stage that they've got to. And there's not one single person I would challenge watching this that can't think of one example when they knew something wasn't quite right, but they didn't do something about it. And all I'm saying is this, to me, is where the great change happens. When you let go of worrying about what other people are going to say or think about, you're much more likely to stand up for what your beliefs are, and your beliefs won't be the same as my beliefs. And therefore, this is how we tackle all the world's problems, because we've all got things we're passionate about and we know a little bit about, or we intuit about, and then we can't necessarily stand up for the others that we're not even aware of or we don't know anything about.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. 100%. We become so, what goes back to that whole just kind of brainwashed into just kind of going with the flow, and then we get caught in that negativity that we call it a samskara in Sanskrit. It's like a scratch on a record that keeps hitting over and over and over again. I don't think we have viewers young enough to not know what a record is. Okay. I'll have to tell you all a funny story about age in a minute, but yeah, because we get stuck in that rut, and that's what a rut is. It's kind of hitting your head against the wall instead of going, okay, I now understand where I went wrong and why I keep hitting myself. I'm just going to pivot a little bit and now go this way. And start. And that's it. A lot of us took a lot of shit for the Zappardy doodahs, but we still didn't back down, and the world hasn't ended. And in fact, as I was saying, my last experience at the doctor's office was a really good one. No pressure, nothing, and so we said no. I'm trying not to, and that's one thing I think too, like I'm really trying not to judge people who got the Zappardy doodah harshly, because they're still, I've been telling you, Catherine, at this point, I don't even give a shit who anybody votes for, because I see people are so much more complex than that. And there's so many really good people. And so if we're sitting here on this side of like truth, having such harsh judgments against people who don't think like us, then are we really as awakened as we think we are? Are we really that evolved? Because if we're holding all that anger against other people, it doesn't affect me. If my neighbor wants to get 20 Zappardi-doo-dahs, it doesn't affect me. That's her choice. Just like I made the choice not to. That's my choice. And so, but I can still love my neighbor as a fellow human being who's really sweet and kind, you know, and treats my dog like the Maharaja that he is, that's why, I just don't even give a shit anymore about the details of people, because their hearts are what speaks louder. And there are a lot of people out. And so if we're holding that much anger and judgment against people who aren't aware of the scandals, we'll say, that go on behind the scenes, then are we any better than the other side of this? Are we? No, that's showing more about us than it is about them. And so if we are the more evolved sign, the more awakened and aware side, then we have to start acting like it. And we start to start having grace for people and really get to know people and love people. Despite, I mean, at this point, I don't even ask anybody like, what's your political, like, I'm not even going to do that. I don't give a shit.
I've never done that in my life because I'm not attached to it. But I think it's a bit different in the UK. We don't have, it doesn't seem to be such a point of conversation than it does in America.
It used to not be.
Religion as well. But that doesn't mean there's other things that we don't. Obviously, we've got a real issue over here still with class. And, that's a major issue and topic of conversation still in the UK in a lot of circles. But the other thing that's really occurred to me, and because I'm seeing it so obviously now, is we have to be open to people asking us to, and questioning everything we do. And I welcome people questioning my decisions I'm making, because there's some things I haven't given a lot of thought to. The things that I gave a lot of thought to when I was 20 are very different to what I do now, because you wouldn't expect someone in their 50s to living the same lifestyle as they were in their 20s. At 20s, you should be a bit more carefree and feeling you're invincible and not worrying and having the weight of the world on your shoulders. That's a time of life when you have got that freedom, hopefully, for some people. And I think this is the point of no one knows everything. And the beauty of it, go back to, again, my boring old analogy of the football team is you need a goalkeeper, you need forwards, you need midfield, you need wingers, you need defenders. And if any one of those positions is weak, the whole team falls down. So with all this, it's so wonderful. That's why I have loads of people that I chat to on subjects that I don't know much about, because otherwise, what's the point? If I'm talking to things that I already feel very confident that I've got a good grasp on, I'm not learning anything. But there's so many areas where I know nothing. And I think that's one of the areas where you know nothing, your greatest gift, because that's where you can be really open and just see these anomalies happening a lot earlier. Because if you've been brought up to ride horses in a certain way, to you that's normal. If you've been brought up in a very strict religion, we know that becomes normal until you reach a certain stage in your life where you might start to question things. But the things that you haven't been brought up exposed to, you're able to question a lot easier because you haven't been indoctrinated into that belief system.
There's no, yeah, absolutely. It's funny. We were speaking about 20 something year olds and I had an ex that used to call your early 20s your dipshit years. Like, right? Like the mistakes you make in your 20s are cute, but by the time you get to the 30s, they're not so cute anymore.
Exactly.
But I will tell you guys, this made me laugh so hard. If even somebody, what I do for fun when I have some free time is I either watch like family vloggers or I watch comedians, because I like to laugh. And there's this guy that I found his little shorts on YouTube, and he's so funny, and he'll find things on like Reddit or wherever, Twitter, and he'll elaborate. There was a chain, I don't know if it was Reddit or Twitter, where these 20-something-year-old kids were talking about this fabulous idea. Wouldn't it be amazing, you guys, if they created a phone that was like in your house that the whole family could use just in cases of emergency? And the guy was like, am I this old And he said, he goes, y'all, that's been done. It's called a landline.
Yeah.
Like, it was this whole chain about what a fabulous idea this is. Create a phone in your home that everyone can use, and just in case of emergency, and that stuff makes me laugh. Like,
Yeah.
I appreciate people, so you could be an arrogant person that would be like, you dumb 20-year-old, this was a landline, or you could be like, guys, this is hysterical. Like, it's like, I remember seeing on I think it was Facebook, it went around for a while. I'm not on Facebook anymore, but the kid found an old, like, Van Halen cassette tape out in the woods, and he brought it home to his mom, and he goes, "Hey mom, I think I found a relic from the Civil War."
And you're like, oh, that is how old I am. I know, it's just comical. It's just absolutely comical. And this is where, we started off today by saying none of this wisdom, this advice, none of it's new.
No.
It's a cycle, but it comes back to you at certain times. And there's a reason why it comes back to you at certain times. And there's a reason why certain quotes you'll be attracted to and certain comedies you'll be attracted to. Because that's something you need to know now. And I tell you what, never before, since all this crap's gone on for the last few years, never before have I had so much appreciation for the simple things in life, for different people's skill sets. And also never before I've had more appreciation when someone will actually tell me, if they see me doing something that's wrong or dangerous, or did you know that this food has that in it, or did you know that was dangerous. And I've got a lovely neighbor, and they're really into, they've got their own chickens, they grow loads of their vegetables, they've got all sorts of lovely natural ways of living their life. And then I went out there, I think I might have mentioned to you last summer, and I saw them with a thing of Roundup on their back, spraying the weeds on their drive. Now, the person I was with, I won't mention their name, said, don't say anything, you upset them, don't say anything. And I was like, well, one, my cats walk across this drive, so I'm saying something. But secondly, I just went up really nicely, because this woman is lovely and she's given me loads of tips. I've learned so much from her about growing vegetables and everything. And I just said to her, I said, oh, did you know that that's really dangerous, and there's been loads of studies that say it's carcinogenic? And she said, oh, it's all right, I'm just using it here. I said, no, honestly, it would be getting into the water. You've got cats, they're walking across it, it will spray, will be on your vegetables that you're eating. She didn't get cross with me at all, because I didn't say it in a judgmental way. I said, oh, would you like me to send you some stuff back? She said, oh, please do, send me some stuff, please do, I had no idea. She said, well, I can't believe they're still selling it in the garden centre if it's really that dangerous. So because I said it in a non-judgmental way, because I knew she didn't know, because I knew how brilliantly her lifestyle is, so you don't have to take offense when people pass stuff out, information.
No.
You don't have to agree with it, because I could have sent her the stuff and she could have said, fine, that's an acceptable risk for me.
Yeah. No, and we've gotten so, like, sensitive about that. I know that back in the day there were problems with this kind of stuff. Of course, people take it overboard, but I feel like at least when I was a kid, people had more respect for each other. And so there was more respectful, like, and especially, like here in the South, if I don't say, if there's a man or a woman around me who is significantly older than me, if I don't say yes, ma'am, even at 40 years old, like if my grandmother was still alive, if I didn't, or to my mom, if I didn't say yes, ma'am, to my mom at 40 years old, my mom would still probably pop me up by backside the head. And that's the thing too, is like we should be able to take and have these conversations and respect each other, and know what we're all just walking each other home. It's like, I was shocked. Recently Tamara was on my show where we did slow poisoning part 2, and she talked about the barcodes, and I shared the list in the Signal group, because what they're doing is they're taking certain countries don't have the regulations that other countries do. And so, like, if you're in I think like Thailand or something, you could be growing strawberries next to a sewage plant.
Yeah.
And they're not putting it on, but they're putting it in the barcode. And so I was so grateful, because you could be buying strawberries thinking, oh, this is great, this is healthy. But meanwhile, they weren't, they were packaged next to a sewage plant and shipped on to the other side of the world. Like, we need to know these things. And so it's if we have an open mind, then we can start to take in information that's going to make our lives better and more vitality.
Argument when people criticize people who don't eat meat, whether you call them plant-based or whatever, And they're saying it's because there's so much sprays on the plants. And I'm like, but what do you think they're feeding the farm animals that you're eating? This is what's so funny. And it's like, not in a nasty way. I went years, Brice, thinking there was nothing wrong with eating factory farm dairy products, because I thought, well, they're not sending the cows off to slaughter. I was an adult but then someone said to me, well, where do you think they get the milks from? It's because they're taking the calves away. And I hadn't occurred to me. I genuinely hadn't. And as soon as they said that to me, I was like, oh my God, of course they do. I'm not stupid, but I just hadn't taken the time to think about it. But once they did tell me and the light bulb went off, then I could make a different decision. And don't start getting on to me about how dangerous plant milks are and everything. You don't have to drink milk at all. You know, there's no other species in the world that drinks the breast milk from another animal. End of. Right.
Well, and I will say too, that's good information too. So like my teacher in India actually speaks about this, because my teacher in India is big on dairy products. However, he has talked about, if you come from the Western world, be careful.
Yeah.
And if you are a newly vegetarian and this is news to you, you can go to certain health-based stores and you can ask them for specific products that are not, would be considered like vegetarian-esque. Like if you absolutely think you have to have cheese or eggs, you can find those products made by specific companies here in the United States that do not pull the calf away from the mother. They do not, they're very aware of do no harm. And that's the main reason why I'm a vegetarian, honestly, you guys, is just to do no harm. And that to me, like, you will never convince me that vegetarianism is part of the controller's plan. No, it's not. You really
it's so ridiculous. It's really so ridiculous.
Eating a living being is part of the good.
Yeah.
That animal had a life too. And
and we're not talking about people that live in the parts of the world where they've got no choice. I've got a lovely lady I'm hoping to interview soon that's been living off forage stuff, and she did go back to eating some meat, but there's a big difference between eating sorry, I've swallowed a bit of my mint from my mint tea. But this is the thing, you see, you can argue all these things are, and everyone who's arguing that veganism is a cabal. No, there's a big difference between eating fake Beyond burgers and choosing to eat plant-based. I mean,
I was about to say, like, listen, those Beyond Burgers that Mr. Gates creole, I don't know one vegetarian or vegan.
I do not know either, but I know plenty of people that eat, all products, whether they're meat, whether they're vegetables, whether they're carbs, whatever, that have got no idea about balancing their diet. So to put any category of any one person under one thing is just ridiculous. But I did have to say about the meat eating, because then people say, well, it's grass-fed beef. Just because you've got it from a farmer's market, you don't know what those cattle have been fed. You don't know where they've been slaughtered or anything. So, we can convince ourselves when we want the argument to be. And I'm not saying, people, that you shouldn't eat meat. I'm saying you should eat whatever you want to eat. But I'm saying, if you're consciously aware of it and don't try and make excuses for your behavior, that's my opinion.
And if us talking about vegetarianism is triggering you, that's a you problem.
Absolutely.
Problem. I get emails a lot when we talk about this, with people yelling at me, and I'm like, that's a you problem, honey. You're obviously triggered by this. So
don't put in if anyone puts in the comments below, I'm afraid I will laugh at you. Oh, well, I tried being vegan for years and I was just really unhealthy. Well, that's because you weren't balancing your diet. I know, you've only got to look what percentage of your country and my country are obese now. It's something like 70%.
Oh God, it's through the roof. Yeah.
That aren't vegan, that are very unhealthy as well. So don't blame that on being vegan or vegetarian or meat eater. Whatever your choice is your choice. But Brice and I own our choices.
French fries are vegan. Yeah, it's about you making your choices. French fries are vegan. So yeah, you've got to be, which is great, knowing that, because if you are stuck in a situation, you can find something. But yeah, you guys, it is. And if you're triggered by this is a good example. Well, what about protein?
I've got a really good one with Jeffrey Berady on my channel about plant-based myth bashing, and he does a really nice explanation actually about the difference between plant-based and vegan, in terms of what it is, and both are fine. As he said, for me, I went because of an ethical decision, because I'm lucky enough to have the knowledge and the choice to be able to eat healthily on a plant-based. If I was doing this amazing foraging lady and I was going to just completely not buy any food from the shop for a year, and if it comes to that, which it could do, that they cut off all our supply chains, then I'll rethink.
What I will say, so I'll say, if you study the Native Americans, which I don't even know what the Native Americans were anymore, like I don't even know what's true, but when they would hunt for animal, it was a ceremony, and they would thank the animal. They went through a huge ritual of praying over the animal, thanking it for giving it life, and they used every single part of the animal. They were so appreciative of that sacrifice. So is that what you're doing when you eat meat? Are you using every single part of the animal? Are you thanking it? Are you doing, so they even understood in those situations that they were taking a life to save a life. And so that's a very different. And I will say, I remember, so my mom's family, and this just kind of gives you guys an example of like listening to your gut. My mother's family, my mother is from Charleston, South Carolina, which is the low country here in the United States. There's a dish called she crab soup that's very popular in the low country. It's served everywhere. And I grew up on she crab soup. Now, I must have been like 5 or 6 at the time. I was very little. And we were in South Carolina, and we were at a restaurant with my mom and her family, and we all got she crab soup as an appetizer. Well, at that age, I wasn't old enough to understand that meat came from an animal. Like that connection had not happened until this day, because that was the first time they brought the soup, and the meat of the crab was still shaped like the crab, and you were supposed to mix it up. And I saw that, because usually she crab soup, it already comes mixed together. So it just like looks like a chowder, basically. Yeah. I remember seeing that as a child, and I started to scream. And I remember throwing a temper tantrum, because I was just, the fact that was an animal, it was a crab in my bowl. And I remember I had a blue dress on. I remember throwing my head around in the booth. I didn't even want to look at it. And my mom going, no, it's okay, I'll mix it up. And when my mother started to mix it up, I started to scream even more, crying. For a 5-6-year-old, the implication that was an animal in my bowl was so heartbreaking and horrifying to me, that we are eating this animal. And looking back at that, and then by 14, I became fully a vegetarian. But looking back at that now, it's like, that was my gut instinct as a very innocent child, to be like, why are we eating this? So we have to look. I was triggered at 5 because it was an animal. It was a crab in my bowl, and I didn't want to hurt. I didn't want anybody to hurt it.
Just like children will say, no, I don't want to go to that particular person, and you're told not to be. I mean, we've all spent our life having our intuition knocked out of us.
Yes.
We have. So this is why I keep saying, don't blame yourself when you come to these realizations. Just say, oh, that's really fascinating. I can see where that's come from. Because how many children have tried to speak up about things, like the fact that every single child I've ever met can easily talk to animals. I mean, it's a completely natural gift they all have. And then they get told by grown-ups that, don't be silly, animals can't talk. So they shut that bit of that down. That's exactly the same as that. You had a visceral reaction, so you knew for you it wasn't right. And
it was not. It was a moral. My moral compass had the boundary. Well, that's one of my favorite quotes is, if you need religion to know right from wrong, you don't need religion. You need morals. As a 5-6-year-old, my moral compass was pushed by the boundaries of what I thought was ethically right or wrong. At 5, I don't even know if I knew what the word ethically meant back then, but I knew it was wrong. And so I don't think it shocked my parents too much that I have spent most of my life now not being a meat eater at all. So we have to go back and start. And that's the fun part, guys, kind of going back to the beginning, like the seeds you are planting, like getting back to know yourself, finding your sense of self. Who were you when you were a child? What did you, children it goes back to, like, little kids get super excited about their friends, like when their friends wins a prize. My niece and nephew, when their friend at school wins a prize, they come and tell me all about, like, their friend who won the treasure chest. They get really excited for other people, because kids have that sense of self, and then it gets knocked out of us by having to meet the demands of the world. Well, let's get back to that, because that's what's going to make the world a better place, when we can start checking ourselves and investigating ourselves, and then course correcting.
Yeah, love it. Do let us know what you think below. I do things like that. I love these coffee chats. For me, they're really exciting. I'm really enjoying finding out more about myself all the time. I'm really enjoying about getting firmer and further in my boundaries in terms of what's acceptable. And it doesn't trigger me when I hear things like that now, because I just know where my line is. And there's other things that do trigger me. I've got more work to do there.
That's what makes life fun.
That's what makes life fun. We will be back next week. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful, wonderful rest of the week, everyone. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen. And if you feel inspired, please do share with your friends and family. My goal is to inspire as many people as I can to live their best lives, to stay curious, and to raise their consciousness and that of the collective. So to do this, I need to reach as many people as possible, and this needs your help. If you feel drawn, would you be willing to share your favourite episode with 5 different people? This helps us spread the word and also helps me encourage some exciting new guests to take part in this podcast. If you feel drawn to do that, I will be very, very grateful. All the links and discount codes where applicable for all the products that I support are on my 2 websites, catherineedwards.life and catherineedwardsacademy.com. All of the products are personally tried and tested by me, my family, and my clients. And finally, please do press the follow or subscribe button, depending which platform you're listening on. And above all, stay curious and stay free.